Did you think that you would see more cuckoo clocks in life, similar to the way that you thought there'd be more quicksand in your life?
Oh my God, yes, absolutely. And then nothing nowhere to be found, like Bermuda
Yeah.
Triangle, like we just don't talk about it anymore. Like
Yes.
Bruno, like
Yeah,
what's happening?
totally. Absolutely.
Hello. Do you want to play a game?
What's your favorite scary movie?
Be afraid. Be very afraid.
See dead people.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Here's Johnny.
The power of Christ compels you! The power of Christ compels you!
Whatever you do, don't fall asleep.
Welcome to Talking Horror with Jamie and Nikisha.
Hi, I'm Jamie.
And I'm Nikisha, and this is Talking Horror with Jamie.
And Nikisha.
I'm just trying to mirror. Where we share our love for all things scary and talk horror through the lens of human behavior. Welcome, everyone.
Welcome.
Fun times. Great sound effects.
Yeah, because this episode is Cuckoo.
Ooh.
Cuckoo. I don't know.
Was with the eyes. Cuckoo, cuckoo.
Cuckoo,
Side
cuckoo.
to side. Yes,
Yeah.
you got it.
Do you think
Well-
cuckoo clocks are cool or no?
I think when I was younger, I thought that they were cool just because they were so saturated in the media that I was consuming randomly. Like I remember a Sabrina the Teenage Witch episode and there was a cuckoo clock and I'm like, oh, this is cool.
Did you think that you would see more cuckoo clocks in life, similar to the way that you thought there'd be more quicksand in your life?
Oh my God, yes, absolutely. And then nothing nowhere to be found, like Bermuda
Yeah.
Triangle, like we just don't talk about it anymore.
Yes.
Like Bruno, like
Yeah,
what's happening?
totally. Absolutely. Okay, now that that's out of the way.
I just love that quicksand was your first, like, and I'm like, oh
Right.
yeah.
Didn't you think there'd be
it
more
comes
quicksand?
up pretty frequently based on
Yeah.
all the movies
Yes.
and cartoons we watch.
Like the Mummy or something. It's like, yeah, we're just gonna, or just like you're just gonna walk on the beach and then just fall into quicksand, and it's like,
Yeah.
how? Okay,
These are
but
real
we're
dangers.
here. all the dangers. But as producer Brian mentioned, we are here to talk about the 2024 horror film Cuckoo.
And what makes you think you can take charge of the rest? If I were you, I would stay home until my body was done growing back those cells. I wouldn't want to get hurt even more. As if I was stuck in a loop. Can you do this?
Now, this movie was written and directed by Tillman Singer, and it stars Hunter Schafer, Jane Bluthart, Martin Chokash, Jessica Henwick, and Dan Stevens. Obviously, heavy spoilers if you have not watched Cuckoo. And Jamie, please share those trigger warnings with us.
Yeah, trigger warnings. Weird. I mean, definitely weird mouths. First and foremost, I gotta
Yes.
hit you with the weird mouth trigger because
Yes.
that bothers me deeply. And I
WMT.
was not prepared, and
Yes,
here it
WMT.
was.
Yes.
But also just like a weird creature species thing. Definitely some impregnating of people without their consent. Weird goop coming from weird places that we can allude to where they're coming from. Like another weird facility type place. I feel like anything that features like just weird, the hospitals or like pseudo, that kind of thing, always gives me alarm bells. Just like weird white men in this movie.
Yeah, a lot of
That
them.
is a trigger
A
warning.
lot
Weird white
of
men.
them.
Yes.
Brian said something while we were watching it, and I was like, that has to be like a new category, like
I wrote-
a sub genre of movie that we need to like.
In my
keep
likes
track
of
of.
this, because in my likes of this, literally my second bullet point in my likes is Dan Stevens is so good at being white man disgusting.
Yes.
It was specifically Because we saw him in Abigail earlier this year. He's in a lot of other things where he's white man disgusting, which is funny because the first time we all really experienced him was being white man charming on Downton Abbey.
Oh, I never watched that, so I didn't know that he was in that.
He was in that. Yeah.
He famously left to be a movie star, and then he became the Beast. His hand on that scene where his hand is on her shoulder, and then he says like young woman, and like the sound effects make it's an incredible sequence, but because he's white man disgusting.
Yes, like it makes it work within the context.
Yeah, he's incredible at it. Yeah, totally.
I love it. And on the flip side, it was interesting seeing Martin Chokesh playing not a super evil villain, because I only know him from like Equalizer mostly. And he's always just playing some like Russian mafia. What it is like that's his brand of character. So to not see him in that context and see him more in a fatherly role was very interesting.
Yeah.
Yes. But yeah, any more trigger warnings, Jamie, before we move on?
Like guns, kids in peril.
Yeah, kids in peril.
Bookcases falling on you.
Oh, if that's a fear, like
I
the
don't
quicksand.
know. I'm just saying.
Yes.
Oh,
Mind
pools
control.
with no water. Yeah,
Maybe.
mind control. Car accidents.
Pools with no water.
Pools with no water.
Yeah.
Oh my
I don't know. That's
God.
kind of freaky deaky. When she walked in that room and I saw the pool with no water, I thought to myself, "Oh, that's the secret room in the White House where B613 is out of."
Oh, that's it.
And,
You're correct.
And the second thing I
Oh
thought was
my
like, "Oh, he's gonna put her
God.
in here and trap her." But there was a nice little staircase. Anyway, that's besides the point. We're
Gorgeous. I also like our two things that we have now: the WMT weird mouth things, and then the weird white men. We need to keep that going as we continue, please.
Oh no, it's white men disgusting. Oh no, she said weird white men. Yeah.
Weird white men. There you go. All right. Fantastic. Well, before we get into things, producer Brian, please give us some words.
Hi everybody, I'm producer Brian. You might know me from this podcast. And hi YouTube. We're on YouTube. Hi YouTube. If you want to watch us, not just on YouTube or listen to us on podcasts, you can also find us on social media. We are at Talk Horror Pod on TikTok, on Instagram, and on Blue Sky. However, if you have to choose, because TikTok goes away for whatever reason, I would say hop on to Instagram and follow us there. We're getting closer to the end of the year. We'll be doing our best of the year. That's going to come out. We're using the full year to watch movies, so it's going to come out as our first episode in 2025. That whatever that the Thursday the 2nd or whatever it is. But we're excited for that one for sure.
That's going to be so good, and I'm excited to catch up on the listicle of movies I need to watch before we get into it. Fantastic. Well, you guys, what have you watched? Have you watched anything before we go into this?
Friday the 13th Part 3.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. What a bummer.
I watched some others like non-horror stuff, but that's not here nor there.
Yes. Actually, okay, side note, this is real life horror, but the way that the entire world is so invested, i.e. myself, is the United Healthcare stuff.
Man.
Sure.
And I'm not even like I'm taking a step back from social media, so I'm not like on it all the time like I usually am.
Yeah.
So I'm getting my news from like between the news app on the iPhone and then BuzzFeed.
Sure.
Yes, notoriously very reliable news source.
Spectrum.
BuzzFeed. Because it's like the news is giving me like we might have comprehended blah blah blah, and he had blah 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 on him, and then BuzzFeed is like, look at all the thirsty tweets from this guy, or like look at all the photos of this guy, and it's like the wildest thing. It's like, yeah, we are actually like living in a dystopian society right now, and it's really insane. But I just had to bring it up since it's kind of horror related.
Oh, it definitely is. It's like some weird Denzel Washington thriller where he comes in as the cop, like in the middle of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like, where's Liam Neeson? Where's like what's happening?
Totally. Yeah.
Yes.
It's
but
wild.
also subsequently, like, is Batman around? Like, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, 100%.
Yes. Vigilante justice is in.
Goodness, vigilante justice.
It's so hot right now. Vigilante justice.
It's like
vigilante
it's in.
justice.
It's the thing. Like that's going into 2025. Like that's going to be the thing. Anyway. Okay, fantastic. So we're here for Cuckoo. You're here for Cuckoo. We need a plot summary. So producer Brian is going to give us a 2-minute plot summary of Cuckoo.
Okay, are you ready?
Are you ready?
No. I think so. We watched this pretty recently, so I think I'm ready.
What's the plot?
All right. Well,
Awesome.
you have 2 minutes to show us, all right, how ready you are.
Okay.
Ready, steady, go.
So Gretchen's mother dies. She's 17 years old, and she ends up moving back with her father, her father's, her stepmom, her father's husband, her father's wife, and their young daughter, so her half sister. Her name is Gretchen. But they're moving to the hotel, a resort in the Bavarian Alps where they had spent their honeymoon. Anyway, she doesn't really get along with them. She feels very disconnected. She's also grieving for her mother. Herr Koenig, who runs the resort, is a weird, white man disgusting. And he offers her a job at the front desk, and weird things start to happen. She's followed and attacked by this like woman in a babushka and glasses. Her sister Alma is having like seizures when they hear a weird noise. And lots of women are like puking in the store. Anyway, she ends up meeting a undercover detective, a cop or whatever, who's investigating murders that had happened there previously. She's almost run over but she hates it there. So she ends up stealing money and leaving with one of the guests, a woman named Ed, who they kind of like have a little fling. They get into a car accident. Ed gets really hurt, and so does Gretchen. Gretchen and the detective end up spying on one of the workers who, anyway, she gets attacked by that woman as well. So no one's gaslighting her. It's real. Man, there's so much that I feel like I need to. Anyway, she ends up, long story short, what we find out is that this resort is full of like these humanoid species that are like the cuckoo that they are trying to preserve. And so these cuckoos, basically like cuckoo birds, inseminate their offspring into other people. They give birth and then come back to get it. When they spent their honeymoon there, that's when Alma was born. Alma is like the next stage of these cuckoos. And so she has to end up saving her sister from the cuckoos. Gretchen kills the main cuckoo woman and saves her sister. And there's this beautiful arc of like not wanting to be her sister and then being her sister, and her sister saves her. We'll talk about that. And then they find Ed, and Ed kind of saves them, and they all drive away. And the detective and Herr Koenig, creepy white guy disgusting, both kill each other in a gunfight. That's Cuckoo. It's Cuckoo.
And that's the plot.
It's Cuckoo. That's it. Great job.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's
great, but thank you.
No, you got it. I mean, I was following along with you as much as I was following along with the movie. So let's get into our first newly segment, Trick or Treat.
Trick treat.
Where we tell you off top if we liked it or not via, was it a treat? We liked it. Or was it a trick? We did not like it. Or if we're in between So I am going to go first and say that I am leaning more on trick for this, and I hope this conversation will change my mind. So I wanted to put that out there first before the influence
Yeah.
comes in. So Jamie, what about you? Trick or a treat for you?
I think that I'm closer towards treat with a little bit of but more treat.
Okay. Grant and producer Brian.
I'm all in on treat. I loved this.
Really? Okay. I have to
Yeah.
hear you guys' thoughts first.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, let's get into it with likes and gripes. Okay.
And now our likes and gripes.
Actually, producer Brian, why don't you go first? You haven't gone first in a
No,
while.
I think you should go first because
You don't want us to influence you.
I want to be able to. I don't want to influence you up front.
I want the peer pressure. I want to be influenced. I want you to tell me why it's good.
Okay, I'm happy to go first.
Yes, please.
Okay, I loved this movie because I loved the grounded chaos of the movie. I thought that this movie is wild. It's insane. It's silly in some places. It's genuinely scary. The tone is awesome. I thought the director was consistent. I thought that no matter what the choice was in the script, the camera work was impeccable, and Hunter Schafer's performance is incredibly grounding in this entire movie. She has one of my favorite lines in horror this year when he's like, "Because you belong here," and she's like, "Who says that like that?" I just thought that like the performance was really layered. I believe she's 25 in real life, and I thought she played a 17-year-old expertly, and it's probably because of her Euphoria experience. But like, I just thought it was really great. I thought Dan Stevens, as we mentioned, was just really good at being white man disgusting. And somehow this movie really balances. I know exactly who the bad guys are. I kind of know what's happening with like, I have no idea what's going to happen next at the same time. And I like that. That's also why I like Barbarian. Like, this felt very much in that, like, what's going to happen next? I don't know. But the director and the screenwriter, you know what it is? I felt safe watching this movie. I felt like it was like watching. I felt like I wasn't going to be even if I didn't like the plot points. I felt like I wasn't going to be let down by the direction, if that makes sense. I think empty resorts are scary. We know that from like The Shining and stuff like that. But I thought that was scary. Just as a note, old school phones ringing make me crazy when no one answers them. That is something I hate, and it just drives me nuts.
Interesting.
Oh, the first time the reverse happens, where the sound happens and she like repeats the same moment and does that loop. Jamie and I were like, "Is this skipping?" Like, it was done so expertly.
It was done very well.
Gotcha. Yeah.
We were like, "Is this skipping?" Like, and I think that's incredible. We think we're going crazy at the same time the character does, and I think that's wonderful. I loved the shot of her hitting her head on the glass because it's from the other side, so all you hear is the thud and see the crack in the glass. But because you're not on her side, like in that moment, you only get like the third perspective, and it's so much worse than it looked. And I love that. I love that the dad never outright says that it's his daughter's fault. But just with his eyes and the look and the acting, she can feel it and knows she's being betrayed. And she knows that like Herr Koenig is like whispering in their ears because he has a hold over them with the cuckoos. I love when he's like threatening her, and as the dad comes in, he says, "Apology accepted." Like everything is smoothed over. I thought that was great. I thought the dad relationship was fascinating and layered without like, it was showing us, not telling us, and I loved that. It had this delicious 80s vibe, and it was super weird, and people had cell phones, but it didn't feel like that. It had a It Follows vibe where like you don't know what time and place it's taking, especially because it's in this like European town. I thought, this is what I wrote. It's a perfect example of a chaotic film with a stellar leading performance that completely grounds it. Like, if Hunter Schafer was all over the place, this movie doesn't work. But I feel like I understood what her character wanted. I understood how this was getting in the way. I understood thematically what was happening there, and that's why it all kind of worked for me. This movie has a lot going on. I understand that. and I'm not 100% sure what it said about family and whatnot. But I was entertained, and I think it was saying more about grief than it was about family, or tying those together with the sister. I absolutely teared up when she covered her ears and like used her sound to save her sister. I absolutely cried when she listened to the tape recording of, because the sister doesn't really understand that her mom is dead, and
Right.
so when she calls the mom and leave the messages to like do that, and then when the sister signs to her that it's cool that she's listening to music, I just love that. And just the change in the dialogue where she says like, I have to save my sister, where at the beginning she denied that she was even her sister. I thought that was a very believable arc in this movie by that character. And the dealing of grief in this movie was not like Babadook grief. Like, it wasn't upfront in your face about dealing with grief. Grief was just what this character was going through, and I just think that was really expertly done. Like, the Dan Stevens character being an asshole and like pointing out the box, knowing that it's gonna fuck everything up for everyone, was like incredible. All of that. My main gripes in this movie, I had two gripes, and they weren't enough to like do this, but the plot or what was happening was not always clear, because it was hard to hear a lot of the stuff that was over the loudspeaker. I felt like a lot of exposition happened over the loudspeaker or very quickly, and this movie has a lot of weird intricacies in the convoluted like Cuckoo plot. Did I pick up on it? Yes. Did I have to work a little bit for it? Yes. I didn't mind that, but I think that definitely got in the way of like pure enjoyment up front. I thought a lot of the sequence at the end was a little drawn out with the gunfighting and stuff like that. But I still think it was saved and worked by the relationship between the sisters. And a real pet peeve of mine in this is the timeline of selling the house and them leaving messages on the answering machine felt very fast and off. Like, they sold it and got the stuff back, and that was the answering machine. Like, when she was leaving messages like a week before, like that felt way too fast. And I thought that like even Jessica Henwick in her small role was really good. I thought everyone was bringing their A game. I was just delighted and entertained by this thing, and I just didn't know what was going to happen next. And it committed to the bit. It committed to the Cuckoos. It was a little over the top in some places. I was totally okay with that. And if I'm comparing it to something like Longlegs, if you will, two neon films that like were a little weird. I was far enough removed from the hype for this movie, or even the conversations on TikTok, if people liked it or people didn't like it. I didn't remember. And therefore, I was able to go in with little to no expectations. I think I barely watched a trailer for this one because I just like wanted to go in blind.
Yeah, that's great.
I was delighted by this, by so many, on so many levels, mostly by Hunter Schafer's performance, in addition to just like the pure absurdity of some of it, that like it worked for me. I never felt like I was reaching.
That makes sense.
I really liked Cuckoo.
Yeah.
Cuckoo.
Great.
Cuckoo.
Jamie, please go. I'll add on because when I say my things for some of the things that you said, Brian. But yeah, go ahead, Jamie.
Yeah, I did. I think that I mostly enjoyed this movie. I really enjoyed the like the family theme overall, and like kind of like Brian talked about, that shift from kind of having this distance from her sister to like really embracing her at the end and truly being like, you are my sister, I won't let anything happen to you. Like, that was really heartwarming. I did watch Euphoria, so I love Hunter Schafer. I just think she's incredible. Yeah. And agree. Like, man, there are just some folks who are really good at just forever portraying this age, and she's just like really giving full teenager, like, I don't give a fuck energy, and like it's perfect.
But also that same like guilt and like regret of doing certain things, even though they in their gut they know they wanted to. There's
the like impulsivity of being a young person.
Yeah, that's what it is. That's what it is. Totally.
Yeah, because she's just like steals and then like runs away with this like rando, and like that whole interaction. So that was really interesting. The actual like monster I thought was creepy. And like the idea of it, I obviously don't like big mouths, so every time it would open its mouth, I was not a fan. The mechanism of like it can get closer but you're stuck in a loop was really fascinating.
Love
didn't
that.
like the goop. Not
Oh my
a fan
God,
of
the
the goop.
goop.
Not a fan of where the goop was coming from and how we were facilitating said goop.
Yeah. And the close up
But-
of the like warble was always great.
Oh,
And
yeah.
you could tell who it was based on the like
The
the
neck.
costume collar.
Yeah.
I loved that.
Also the like the ear twitching. I
Yeah,
really
yeah.
liked. It was just like really weird. But
A fun
yeah,
skill.
like all
That's a party
those.
trick.
Yeah. I was
little
like,
party
how
trick.
did
I
they
can
like do
believe
that
yours.
little like bloop 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 bloop?
For sure.
I cannot do that. This was me doing it with my hands.
Did anyone else try and cover one ear with your shoulder and the other one with your hand to see if you can actually hear things? Because she does that. She only
I mean, I can.
the fact that she only had one arm for most of
Right.
this
In
movie
the sling,
was
yeah.
was tension perfection.
Yeah. Just like knowing that she's like kind of incapacitated and like how is she gonna
trademark.
like do anything?
Yeah.
I think my biggest gripe was like I like knew generally what was going on, kind of, but I also was simultaneously very confused for a lot of this movie. It took a little bit of time, and I know obviously like they're not going to make it super clear from the get-go,
Sure.
but I think that there was still for me like just a bigger barrier to like being totally on board, even though, and Brian will clock this or verify it, but I did say, I think in like the first scene, I was like, oh, they're impregnating people.
Yeah,
Sure,
when the
I
woman,
you better guess.
when the woman
I-
threw up in the thing, she's like, "Oh, that's some sort of morning sickness. Like they're
Oh
impregnating
my
them."
God. That's awesome.
So maybe it's my magic
Immediately.
power because I have been pregnant. So I was like,
Yeah.
oh, vomiting woman, like
Pregnant.
must be pregnant.
Vomiting woman, stay away from me.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Vomiting woman.
That was beautiful. But yeah, so even though I guessed that like that was probably gonna have something to do with it, I still was like very confused for a while, which I think just kind of made it harder for me to like fully be locked in. But I did really enjoy, like I said, a lot of the elements that they did have. And like, while I don't know, I don't want to spoil my recommendation if nobody brings it up, but it does very much feel like another movie that I'll spoil later.
Yes.
Like there are other things that I feel like are similar to what's happening here.
Sure.
Even though
I
they
feel like
kind
we're
of
gonna. I feel like we're gonna have the
tried-
same
probably.
idea.
Even though I think that they like introduce some really interesting and like creative weird elements to this, but this doesn't feel like entirely new, and it does make me wonder again, like, do I feel like this movie was overhyped in like the horror like social media? Because a lot of people I saw some people who were like, this movie's great. There was a lot of people who I think were also kind of confused
Sure.
from what I remember when it first came out. So I don't know, but I need more time to like sit with this because I definitely was confused for like a good chunk of it.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I'll piggyback off of that in also what Brian, you said convoluted, and that was in my brain too when I was watching this. And not to say that a movie has to give you everything, right? Because we have talked about lots of movies on this podcast where we don't know all of the rules, we don't know all of the answers, but we still like have a great time. But I also was like, I want to know what's happening. I think for me, it was, I wanted to know what was happening sooner than when they gave it to us, when they gave us the full picture. So it didn't have to be right off the top, but I just would have liked to have known like exactly what is happening so that we know what our protagonist is getting into. And I think that would have helped me enjoy it a little bit better. But, I'm going to stand by my trick because Brian, you said barbarian. And I was like, yep. Because I also didn't like barbarian.
Yeah.
So I think it's just something in when I can articulate it better, but something within both of those movies. I think that kind of chaos horror I'm not a fan of.
Yeah, sure.
So and it's not to take away from any of the performances, because I put in one of my notes, like, I was just super annoyed at the character Gretchen, but not at Hunter Schafer's performance. Like, she is doing what is given to her, and she is a phenomenal actress. But I just found myself being so annoyed at our protagonist to where I'm like, you're being an ass. The family's being an ass. Like, I don't care about you guys. Like, the only person I care about is Alma, because she's like the purest thing in this, and I just want her to be safe and happy because it's like the cutest child ever. It's like,
well, I guess can you talk more about why Gretchen frustrated you? Because she did not frustrate me, so I'm interested in hearing your side of it.
yeah, I think it's just, it felt too heavy on, I am a teenager who has to be against everything that's going on right now, you know? So it's like, I'm going to walk in with an attitude of like, and I understand that it's the product of the grieving. It's the product of just being a teenager. It's a product of being, obviously in an estranged family, because it seems like her and her father didn't have that close of a relationship, you know, before her mom died. And so she's walking into the situation that is like everything is stacked up against her. But it just felt like there was no kind of like, I'm trying to make this work in any like scenario. It was just like, I want to get away. I want to be at home. I don't want to participate in any of this. But I also, again, to the other end of it, I don't feel like the family was giving her anything either. You know, like,
yeah,
definitely not on their side. It just felt like two butting heads the whole time. And I think it was just kind of like, okay, is she just going to be teen angsty? It just felt like the character was very one note. It's like, I'm just going to be angry about everything, and everything is affecting me. And, you know, until I will say, when we get to the point of the sisters coming together, I absolutely did believe that as well. Jamie, you had mentioned that journey from her just saying like, that's Alma, that's Beth, into like, well, that's my sister. Like, I totally like got that journey, and that felt believable.
I will say all the things you described, I actually really liked. Like, I feel like that kind of gave it more reality for me. Like, like it, you know, talking about like skulls for a second, like that boosts that score up significantly, because I do feel like it's, out of everything in this movie that is like obviously not based in reality, I feel like having this very grounded in the sense that like the presentation based on everything she's experienced is so visceral and real that like that is what I feel like is compelling about this movie. And then you're like, what is happening around this character? And like, you know, you're like I'm trying to pay attention, but I'm like, I'm so compelled by her that like that's what's keeping me in this. And but I understand that like there are other similar young characters and things that I'm like, oh my God, like you are so annoying to follow and watch because you're just making all of these terrible decisions. But I feel like the impact of her decision making was not going to be as like devastating for whatever reason, even though like she does like get in a car accident, like break her arm, and like, you know, like she's lost her mom, so like she's really isolated from everyone. But I still didn't feel like the consequences of all of that would result in like anything worse. Like I felt like the things that were happening to her that were not in her control were worse than anything that she could have like gotten herself into, if that makes sense.
And a lot of her actions are not the things that lead to the bad things happening around her,
right?
And that also reminds me of a lot of this movie is believable, like Jamie said, is kind of believable in that grief. And to be honest, a lot of the things she does, she's just like poo-pooing here and there, but like she really is staying out of everyone's way and just kind of giving them like sass or whatever it is, and so she can and then she gets chased down by the woman, and then she hits her head, and then that leads. I felt like every plot point that happened and the next thing that happened was I think the South Park guys are always like, in a 30-minute episode, the first thing you introduce has to move the plot forward to the next thing. You can't just say, and then Kenny does this because this is what Kenny does. Like, no,
Right.
it has to be a chain reaction. And I felt like this movie did a great job connecting the plot points through like what's actually happening to these characters. And I think that's, to kind of jump in on what Jamie said, I that also is something that kept me grounded in this movie.
Yeah. No, yeah, I can see that. Maybe I'm just anti-sass, anti-teen angst.
But there are movies that we watch that I can't stand a character because I just cannot relate to the decisions they're making, even in their moments of crisis, and they just make me so anxious with everything they're doing. This, for whatever reason, wasn't one of those. But
yeah,
I'm trying to think of one that we've talked through in this one, where like characters just justifiably are making bad decisions and I can't stand it. I can't remember any, but I'm sure they exist.
But you know, and I will say I didn't ever feel like, oh, she's making like random decisions, you know.
Sure,
it's
sure,
like I can understand, like you were talking about, Jamie, like with the situation and the circumstance, like where she's coming from, but it was just still annoying that even with that, you know, valid. Like you know, that was the chain of events. But I also thought it was shot well. Like it was visually stunning. Like loved how it was shot.
And the sound design was incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, and like you mentioned, Brian, just the tiniest things with the hand across the back, and
right.
Even in you talking about the time period of it all, because like the resort had like kind of the old school ringing phone too. It's like where, you know, but I never thought like, oh my God, what time period are we in? It still all blended very well together.
Yeah, because she's calling her mom on the cell phone, but to an answering machine.
Right. With the tape, with a cassette tape. Like, yeah. You know, very interesting. But it did, that never pulled me out. I wasn't like, why is there a tape? You know?
No. I wonder if something like that pulls people younger than us out.
Oh,
the cassette tape?
Yeah. And an answering machine like that, and a rotary phone. I don't know.
I don't know.
I think it was a rotary. I don't remember, but yeah, in general.
Yeah.
Anyway,
but yeah, it didn't bother me at all.
Yeah.
I will say one plot point that did bother me a lot was the love interest of Ed, just in like what her purpose was besides just being a love interest, like not being involved in the action that was happening, or even in a sense of like being involved in the experimentation or being involved in the saving of her. It was like she showed up for a second and then disappeared and then showed up again to just drive them away home.
So to me, Ed was two things. Ed was the physical manifestation of escaping.
Okay.
So you give Gretchen something to latch onto and something to escape. And because when you're doing it with a physical embodiment of that, it's more interesting visually and stuff like that. So that's the first thing. We also, as like a, you know, an asterisk on that one, we also learn more about her and why she also might feel totally isolated based on her sexuality. You know, like there's also that aspect of feeding the characters information. The second thing, it's a juxtaposition of coming in with, she has to ride with the movers, and they offer her cigarettes, and she kind of like she's very uncomfortable in that scenario, whereas she's leaving with someone and sharing a cigarette and actually having a nice conversation. So like it's the foil to those moments, plus a physical embodiment of like what she actually wants, which is to escape and have her own, like a person to herself or whatever it is, like her mom had her.
Yeah. No, I can buy that. I guess I just also wanted her to be even more involved.
Yeah, no,
you
totally.
know, in what that. But I absolutely buy the physical manifestation of like her trying to escape, and like you said, something to latch on to. So it's not like she's flailing by herself the whole time. But yeah, otherwise, it just wasn't for me.
Yeah,
the story wasn't for me. It's, you know. But
Well, this is our last episode, so no, I'm kidding.
we're done. But I totally understand where you guys are coming from. But I think what clicked for me is just, Brian, when you said barbarian, it's like, oh yeah, there's just something in it.
Yeah,
that,
totally.
just, it's not my vibe. It's not my kind of movie. Great. Anyone have anything else to add before we move on?
I don't think so.
Okay, fantastic.
No.
Let's go to our next section. Brains. Tasty. Tasty. So Jamie was mentioning this, but I am also too just fascinated by the family dynamic of it all. And so my first question to you, Jamie, I just want to talk about the overall idea of integrating Gretchen into the father's new family, because it kind of likens in my brain to like maybe taking in like a foster child. So I just want you to talk about kind of the mindset or like the psychological planning that is needed to like successfully integrate, these family dynamics together, because it seems like they were having a hard time in this movie doing that.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting that you're framing it as like fostering, because like that is her biological father.
Right.
And
right,
the fact that like there's such a weird vibe going on in this family unit, I think really like identifying it in that way just speaks to like, oh, like like clearly she is kind of this outsider within this existing family unit. And I think that sometimes can I am not like a child of divorce. I am not speaking on my own experiences, but just like based on things that I've seen or like anecdotes from other people, that like it can feel like that if one of your parents remarries and like they start their own family unit, and like you're feeling like an outsider to that. And I think even more so the fact that like she grew up with her mom, and then her mom passed, but she's still underage, so she has to go live with her dad. But like they already have essentially their own family unit, and she is like, she's being treated as if she's infringed on that, which I think is worse. Like I think her dad not really like consoling her grieving or like trying seemingly to like connect her into the family. Like that's kind of the vibe that you get. And again, maybe that's presented from the perspective of a teenager who is also grieving. So like there could be other, like the lens that we are viewing it might be skewed because we're viewing it through her. But I do think that like there can feel like this disconnect if you find yourself then like within that unit, even, and like not even to say like this situation in particular. Like I've heard anecdotes of like with like seeing family members on like weekends or like like not as frequently, and like that can still feel that way. So it doesn't necessarily take like a long period of time for this disconnect to come into play. Like it can start from the jump. I think like in terms of how to navigate that, I definitely think like, I know I'm always going to say pro therapy things, but I do think that like, not only individual therapy, but also family therapy would like be a uniquely like supportive way to navigate this for everybody involved, because it's more than just the kid or like the young person in this situation. It's also like, what are the parents doing to facilitate things? And like, is there a person, like a third party who has no skin in it, that can like help hold these conversations in a way where like everybody has a voice and everybody can be heard, and like that it could be a productive conversation. So I think like that is definitely a strategy that can help just like give everyone a voice and help everybody like have a platform to speak, and see like what's needed to move forward. But I think also like that would be particularly helpful and individual because she's grieving a major
on
loss
top of that.
yeah. So it's like the grief isn't helping, but like neither is this family.
Right.
And it's like every time her stepmom looks at her, it's just like with so much resentment for like
Yeah.
being there. It's like, oh God, like why does she have to be here? And feeling like she's, you know, somehow interfering with her daughter, with her stepsister, or like
half sister.
Half-sister.
Yeah, half sister.
So
Well, technically not related by blood at all.
Oh,
True.
right.
Taken to the cuckoo. The cuckoo.
The cuckoos. Yes.
are we doing that because that's what Russell Crowe does in what's the movie where he's the Exorcist, but not the Exorcist?
Oh
It's
no!
the other
Does he
Exorcist.
do it in that? Doesn't Christoph Waltz do it in like Django Unchained or something? Or no, Christoph Waltz does it in Inglourious Bastards. I think at
Yes.
Oh, you're right. But I think he does. I think Russell Crowe does it too. That's like the thing he does to the nuns when he walks
Oh,
past them in the
yeah,
church. He's like,
Yes,
cuckoo,
yes.
and then they're like, tee hee hee.
some point. Yeah, they're like, oh, this Exorcist guy.
Yeah,
What a
I
funny
can't wait.
Italian man.
I can't wait for all 99 sequels.
I'm
But
screaming.
Oh,
I don't
but
think
on-
I've seen this.
Based on that note, like one of the scenes that stuck out to me, like a sore thumb, based like that really showed their relationship, is that when they are rushed to the hospital with Alma in the middle, and she's already there because of the car accident. No,
Yeah.
because she hit her head. This is before the car
Mhm.
accident, and he's like, "You're here too," and you see the struggle of this dad, like. Do I pay attention to my 17-year-old or the little girl? And like, she just needs to be comforted, but understand that whole dynamic with no words,
yeah.
like is like kind of the perfect embodiment of the conversation and the points that Jamie's making.
Yeah.
I mean, it is like these are the moments that I feel like are really important. And like it, you know, putting yourself in the father's shoes for a moment, like it is really hard to split your attention in that way, especially in like a crisis where everyone is involved. And you know, I don't know that I would be able to handle that situation any better. But I think there definitely are enough moments where, you know, he does seem to be prioritizing one child over another.
Right.
And you know, how is that gonna just create more? I mean, also because of the way that he's reacting, it is creating more like distance between siblings. And
Sure.
and then there's more like resentment building in one direction where like where Alma is just like looking up to her half sister and like
Right.
wants to like be around her, even in like the beginning where she goes into her room and she's like pretending to play the bass and like all of that stuff. It's like she just wants to be around her. She wants her to be happy, as evidenced by the voicemail. Like she's looking for that connection. So it's like it kind of breaks your heart because like it's probably more the parents doing as to why there is this disconnect between siblings, and not like Gretchen doesn't really have a reason to dislike. Like Alma hasn't done anything explicitly, but I think it's more of like the attention that
Sure.
that the parents are giving, and more so like her father, and like feeling less important because of that. So it's like I think it's really important that parents are like very aware of how they are interacting with their children, so that resentment doesn't build between the children themselves.
Yeah.
For sure.
And I think one of the most telling things about the relationship, though, is that Gretchen learned ASL.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
Like she definitely cares, but I think it's just more about like she's just really frustrated with the situation, with the loss of her mom, and like with how her dad's handling everything.
Yeah. But listen, God save Alma. She's perfect. The cutest
She's
thing.
so cute.
Golly. That actress did such a good job. It was so cute. Loved it. Fantastic. Well, my next question is, have you seen, or is there any kind of patterns within younger trauma victims, specifically when they might not have been believed of their trauma, or they don't come out about their trauma until maybe later on in life, and them subsequently having maybe kind of like trust issues opening up because people didn't believe them, or maybe they're more like avoidant attachment in their behavior. Is there any kind of like, have you seen any kind of like through line with that?
Yeah. So to take a step back,
Mm-hmm.
like to say like what is avoidant attachment, like what does that mean,
Mm-hmm.
because we've talked a bit about attachment styles before,
Yeah.
and like for those that don't know, there's a theory of like how we are connecting to others and via attachment styles, and it's based on like what our connection is to whoever the guardians were in our caretakers
Mm-hmm.
were in our lives, and depending on how responsive our caretakers were, our attachment style to, and not just to them, but like to anyone, any connection. It could be secure, it could be anxious, avoidant, disorganized, etc. So avoidant attachment style is indicative of like a caretaker maybe uh, providing the most basic of needs, but not really kind of responding to anything outside of that.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, into adulthood, potentially other relationships are looking like, kind of denying others and sticking to themselves, still feeling like lonely and anxious and things like that, but like not really letting others in
Yeah.
because of that. And so I think like, and again, that could be like, being uncomfortable with physical touch and affection, difficulty expressing emotions,
Mm-hmm.
uh saying things like, oh, like you're too clingy to their
Yeah.
partners or like to other people,
Mm-hmm.
like not leaning on people in times of stress, or not providing support when other people try to lean on them. So like a lot of things like that. And I think definitely, experiencing like feeling betrayed by people, I think can certainly contribute to it.
Sure.
I think usually it's like a pattern of these behaviors that are experienced like from our caregiver that impacts attachment. But I do think that if we've had experiences where like people haven't believed us, or like trust has been broken in some kind of way, I think that definitely later on will give someone pause as to whether or not they can like let future people in.
Yeah.
So I definitely think the impact, like could definitely be significant for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I just keep thinking about just, I mean, Gretchen and her dad's relationship is already like pretty estranged, but
Mhm.
even just coming into this new atmosphere and him, like you talked about, like kind of putting more attention on one person than another, especially when Gretchen has experienced, like they're in a hospital together. And the fact that her
Sure.
dad wasn't like, what, are you okay? Like,
Yeah.
what do you need? Was like, it was heartbreaking just to see,
Yeah, it was hard to
that,
watch, especially when
yeah,
there are two parents there, and it's like let's just we can
one
split
go
up
one way, one
for
go the
10
other.
minutes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And take the time. But I also want to point out that Jamie just read me for filth as far as like what the definition of avoidant attachment is. Cause I'm like, yep, that's me. Yep. Yep. But listen, that's why I'm in therapy. It's like, yeah, my dad was absolutely just a provider and no actual like connection. Okay, yeah, I got it. And no emotional connection. Yep, that's it.
But what I will say, I think something that is often like missed when people talk about attachment styles is like nothing is forever. I don't think that anything is forever. So like, what's the point of identifying these things? The point is so that we can like work through them. It's not just like, I guess I'm avoidant. Guess I'm anxious.
Just gonna stay here.
Yeah,
for sure.
No, but like the positive of like being able to identify this, it's like at the core of what I view therapy as is like when you have more information and like then you have more self-awareness and insight, then you can like kind of go anywhere from there. And so like bringing attention to like, how am I relating and making connections with others? And if it's not necessarily serving me, or like maybe I'm doing certain things that are not like leading me into the connections that I truly want, what can I do? And now that I'm aware of these patterns of behavior that I might be exhibiting, what can I do to change them? And not that it's easy to create change, but at least now you're aware, so you can start to like put in the work.
Yeah, that's what therapy's for, man. So you can identify it and put in the work. That's
Put in the
exact
work.
thing. Because if you don't know, how are you going to change it?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
gorgeous. Okay, that's all I have for that. Should we Rotten Tomato this?
Yeah, let's Rotten Tomato this.
It's the Rotten Tomatoes game.
All right, what kind of Rotten Tomato do you think this has on Rotten Tomatoes? What do you think the percent score is on Rotten Tomatoes? Okay, Jamie, you go first.
I'm gonna guess. I'm gonna guess like a 90 because it was like so well regarded. I feel like by critics, so I'm gonna go high.
Nikisha?
I know, yeah, I feel like people like this. I was going to say 83.
This has a 78% on
I
Rotten
was wrong.
Tomatoes. It has a 60% on the popcorn meter, the audience score.
Dang, popcorners.
The critics' consensus reads, directed with inventive flair by Tillman Singer, while given flavor-filled personality by stars Hunter Schafer and Dan Stevens, Cuckoo is a madhouse horror that's on the right side of deranged.
Okay.
All right.
I do want to see Hunter Schafer in more horror movie things, for sure.
Sure.
Mhm.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think she's someone who like is very thoughtful about like the projects that she picks.
Right. Because she doesn't, she's not like engrossed in a lot of things. But
Also does like a lot of like high fashion modeling stuff that is like incredible.
that tracks. Yeah.
Mhm.
God, she has the look for it, for sure.
Mhm.
That's awesome.
All
Grand.
right. Should we guess what this has on Letterboxd?
Yeah.
Okay. Nikisha, you go first.
That was great.
Okay.
Okay, cool. Okay, if the popcorn meter was 60, I'm gonna go 2.9.
All right. Jamie?
I'm gonna guess like 3.
This has a 3 on the nose.
Wow.
The top 3 most popular reviews are number 3. When I say I watch it for the plot, I mean Hunter Schafer.
Yeah, for sure.
Number 2. Does anyone else think that Longlegs and that woman would look really cute together?
Screaming.
Someone set them up on a date right now.
Right now. Yes.
They could sing together. And then the most popular... The most popular...
Just
I do think about that every so often. I had to do it. Sorry.
God, I hate it.
All right, the most popular review for Cuckoo is a lesbian always saves the day. I'll tell you that much.
And that is the gospel truth, okay? That is
shit,
great.
that's so funny.
Yes.
Okay. Should we do the 4 S's?
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
Skull, scare, shakes, and suggestions. The Talking Horrors 4 S's.
The 4 S's are skulls, scares, shakes, and suggestions. Skulls is how well we think this handled mental health and human behavior. Scares is how scary was it. Shakes is how can you shake it off? Is the one and done. And then we'll give our suggestions. Jimmy, why don't you start?
Sure. For Skulls, I gave this a 7. I think that this is like a pretty apt portrayal of a young person grieving, of like a mixed family dynamics. But there were still some things where I was like, huh? Like, I think the biggest glaring thing was like Dan Stevens was like obviously a bad guy, and like everyone was just acting like this guy's a totally normal guy.
Yeah.
And there was literally zero that he was doing that would convince me that he was someone to be believed. So
Yes.
Right.
for scares, I gave it a 4. I don't like big mouths, but also like the kind of like impending fear of like something bad's gonna happen, especially once you figure out the like skipping time or like re-looping time dynamic, that like they're still getting closer, and that being terrifying. So I was like, when is the next thing gonna pop out? And for shakes, I'm giving this a 6 for now. That might fluctuate as time passes. This might be purely based on like recency bias, and I'm still trying to process my feelings on it. So yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nikisha?
Yeah, I did have a 5 for skulls, but I'm moving up to 6. I believe the people. I believe the people. Scares, I gave it a 2. There was a lot of good tension building, and there was one like jump scare from the lady. Maybe it was in the car that I was like, oh, okay, yes. And then for shakes, I'm moving to 3. It's just not my vibe, but yeah.
Yeah. I gave it a 7 for skulls. I gave it a 3 for scares. I gave it a 7.5 for shakes.
Nice.
And my suggestion is the was it 2022 Finnish horror movie Hatching.
Oh.
It's about this woman this little girl, and this little girl who's a ballerina, and her mom is like an influencer, and she just like is very demanding, and she finds an egg, and she kind of keeps it in her room, and then the egg hatches, and then chaos ensues.
I remember hearing about this movie. As you were describing it was like making sense in my head.
Yeah, so my suggestion is Hatching.
Yes. Wait, okay, Jamie, I think we might have the same one. Let's try.
Okay.
Or do you have multiple or just one?
I just have one. Are we doing it at the same time? Like,
Yeah,
say
say it
let's
on
do it.
3.
Okay, 3.
right.
Oh, 1, 2, 3. It
Infinity
follows.
Pool.
Oh wow, we have different ones.
We have different
Go
ones.
us.
Okay.
Oh, yours is so good. Oh, that makes that's interesting.
It feels the same vibe, right? It feels like the same vibe. I think it's the resort of it all.
Sure,
Yeah,
the resort of it all.
like weird rich people doing
Yes.
weird things. Yeah.
Well, like
James.
Oy.
And then you said It Follows. Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah.
absolutely.
This gave me like big It Follows vibes. Just
Sure.
like looming,
Absolutely.
creepy creature thing, looking mostly like regular people.
Yeah.
Right. Cool. Fantastic. All right. Well, that wraps up our episode of Cuckoo. You can follow us on the socials at Talk Horror Pod. Did you say woo?
No,
both said cuckoo.
Oh. Like, yeah, woo, socials. Cuckoo. Got it. Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, and at Talk Horror Pod. And producer Brian, where can they listen to us?
You can listen to us wherever you get podcasts. So you can listen to us here on the fabulous YouTube. Hi, YouTube. You can find... Actually, now if you go on Spotify, from episodes here on out, I'm uploading the video. So you can actually listen to us and watch us on Spotify. So hi, Spotify.
Hi.
That's fancy.
It is fancy. I think you can only watch the full one on the desktop. But anyway,
Interesting.
find us there, and then of course Apple Podcasts. Rate and review us there. 5 stars, please.
And
thank you.
So we just have cuckoo noises.
Cuckoo.
To end.
I have my favorite quote from the movie.
Oh, yes.
yes, of course.
Why did you bring us here? Your family belongs here. That's a fucking weird way to put it.
Yes.
So good. That reminds me of Renfield last year when he was like, "That's such a like." What did he say?
Oh yeah.
He's like, "What? Oh my god, that's amazing. That's so weird."
Oh,
I
he'll
don't
grow the
know.
full power.
Yeah,
And then he's like,
he's like,
yeah.
That's
I can't
so
remember.
amazing. I don't know. It's weird that you said it like that, but I
Yeah.
get the,
Oh,
whatever.
But that's amazing.
man.
Yes. I liked
Oh
Renfield.
man, so good.
Alrighty. Well, thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.